There's loads of question marks around this Spurs team.
The combination of the Premier League and the Champions League with a squad that still, for me, has got a lot of holes in it. I think this could be a difficult season.
They've upgraded in the dugout. I think Thomas Frank is a far better manager than Postecoglou, but he's not been dealt a great hand.
It is the second season, but first full season, for Ruben Amorim.
I think there's massive expectation.
We've known for so long that Anthony needs to be gone, that Sancho needs to be gone, that Garnacho wants out, Malacia needs to go. And they're still there. They've only got rid of Rashford.
I really think fifth place is there for United.
Who are you fighting against if you're promoted?
I think there's more teams that you fear for this season.
I think Wolves are poor. I think West Ham are poor. I think Brentford are poor.
As we sit here, I worry for West Ham, and Troy's absolutely spot on to mention those three teams.
The moment you've been waiting for, our big Premier League predictions. Hello and welcome to part two of our Premier League All Access Big Season Preview with me, Sam Matterface, talkSPORT Chief Football Correspondent Alex Crook, the former Chelsea left-back, FA Cup winner, Champions League record holder at one stage, Scott Minto, and Troy Deeney. Those of you who didn't know
You're a bad kid.
Scott was a Champions League record holder. I should just point out that he did hold the record for being the player to score the fastest own goal in Champions League history, just for a little while.
No, it was about a decade.
It was about 20 years, Scott.
That is amazing. What a claim to fame that is.
Got to be
At
in
least
it to
he
win
played
it.
the Champions
Got
League.
to be in it to win it.
If you missed part one, by the way, of our big Premier League preview, there is a link in the description box and you can go back and see who we think might end up challenging for the title. We'll do our actual predictions at the end of this episode. We've also got the race for Europe in that. We'll talk about some of the other teams that have been sort of struggling a little bit with PSR and getting signings over the line, like Newcastle and Aston Villa in that episode. But coming up today, we'll be looking at the big seasons ahead for Manchester United and Tottenham, last season's Europa League finalists. And we'll also look at the battle at the bottom of the table and if the promoted three can buck the trend of going straight back down to the Championship. Before we wrap up, I'll be asking all three of these for their predictions for next season, and we're going to keep a record of it so over the course of the season we can keep revisiting it and ribbing them to death. So let's get stuck in. Two teams that had abysmal seasons, really, in the Premier League last campaign, and that is Manchester United and Spurs. Obviously, Spurs ended the season on a high with a great victory in the Europa League final, actually a very difficult game to watch. But it cannot get any worse from a league point of view this time around. So what happens to both those two teams? Because there's been a lot of change in the summer. Manchester United obviously have signed a whole new attack, and Tottenham have got a new manager, maybe not as many players as they were hoping for. Scott?
No, and some of the signings they've made or sort of written down were already there from last season. I think Paulinho would be a good signing. I do. I think he's got a lot to prove. 2 seasons ago, he was number one ranked in the Premier League of tackles, and I think he was in the top 3 for interceptions as well. And I think having that number 6, and it looks like Thomas Frank will be playing with 2 holders, will allow Bentancur to get a little bit further forward. But I still... Again, I talk about the combination of, Aston Villa struggled with it last season. Newcastle struggled with it a couple of seasons ago. The combination, physically and mentally, of the Premier League and the Champions League with a squad that still, for me, has got a lot of holes in it. I think this could be a difficult season for Thomas Frank. Obviously, a lot better in terms of where they finished last season. But I think anyone thinks, and I hope they don't beat him with a stick of, well, you didn't win a trophy at the end of the season, because there's some difficult ones to win.
The issue of conceding counter-attacking goals was a massive problem for Tottenham last season. The idea of playing those 2 sixes is obviously to prevent that and still get the best out of the fullbacks who were key to them last season, Troy.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think that the key to having the 2 holding midfielders is so that they don't let the 2 centre-halves get exposed as much as they did before, because when you ask those 2 centre-halves to sprint as many times as they did last year, that's why they keep getting injured. So I think there's more of a protection base there. It's solid, and as you say, you can get the 2 fullbacks. But who are going to be the fullbacks? Is he going to be Pedro Porro? He's flat to deceive. Again, it's an area that Scott can talk a lot better than me. Jed Spence, while young and has shown glimpses, he's got heart, but has he got that extra quality that they need to get you over the line? I'm not sure. So there's loads of question marks around this Spurs team altogether. If Solanke's fit, yes, he scores, but he's hardly ever fit. So how do we keep building a team when your main pieces aren't there? Is Kulusevski a midfielder or is he a winger this season? There's so many questions around that that I think it's going to be a difficult year for Spurs to compete, but I'd expect a top 10 finish. And the big one as well, who's the goalkeeper? Because Vicario hasn't been his favourite since Thomas Frank came in. It's been a young kid they brought in whose name's got out of my mind for some reason.
Antonin
Kinski, yeah. But if we've seen when he came in, he was made a few mistakes, looked a bit rash, very confident, but, you know, being confident and playing at a slow tempo in the Premier League is a recipe for disaster.
I think he looked like the perfect Tottenham Hotspur goalkeeper when he came in, because he was so brave on the ball. He took a risk with it. You know, the motto is to dare is to do. At Tottenham Hotspur, they love a little bit of showboating. So, well, you know, he's the Glenn Hoddle of goalkeepers. He loves to do a trick or two. He might fit in rather nicely. What is the bare minimum expectation for Thomas Frank this year? Because I think he'll be slightly underwhelmed so far, and we've still got a couple of weeks to go, with the transfer business they've done, bearing in mind those they've lost and the big injury to James Maddison.
I think it's really difficult to know where to pigeonhole Spurs, because obviously they were a disaster in the Premier League last season. It was rescued by what happened in the Europa League and the final in Bilbao in particular. But when we're looking at our predictions for the top four, they're nowhere near it in terms of qualifying for Europe. I would suggest we're not really including Spurs in the conversation for all the reasons that Troy has said. Ange Postecoglou, by his own admission, said the squad wasn't strong enough last season to compete in the Europa League and domestically. Well, they're in with the big boys now in the Champions League, so it's going to be even more difficult, and the squad arguably looks lighter. I think João Paulinho could be a good signing, but it was 2 years ago that he was really impressing for Fulham in the Premier League. It hasn't worked out for him in Germany. He's obviously 2 years older. I think Maddison's absence is a massive blow. Not that he was flavour of the month with Postecoglou. Obviously, they tried to sign Morgan Gibbs-White in that position. That hasn't happened. So they're not one number 10 down. They're arguably two number 10s down. Richarlison, does he still want to be there? Would he rather go and be playing week in, week out so that he's got a claim for that Brazilian number 9 jersey? I think there's a lot more questions than answers when it comes to Spurs. They've upgraded in the dugout. I think Thomas Frank is a far better manager than Postecoglou, but he's not been dealt a great hand.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because when he was at Brentford, he had complete control. I mean, not complete control, because Matthew Benham had a very close hand on the tiller, but he had the comfortable working environment that he'd become used to, and he knew the inner workings of everything. He came through as the assistant manager and then took over as the manager. There was no pressure for him to challenge at the top of the league. There was no pressure for him to compete for trophies. It's a different environment at Tottenham completely. It's a big club. There's a different structure above him, and there are different expectations. How is he going to make that transition?
But no, I think he can do that. He's been ready, I think, for a couple of seasons. The job that he did at Brentford. I mean, what I like about him, when I used to cover the Championship on a regular basis, you know, it was dominating the ball. Had the BMW up front, and they were brilliant. And then obviously then one went, and Ivan Toney came in, and then they went up. And he was intelligent enough to realise that I can't play this way. So we're going to go a different way. So against the big boys, actually perhaps for the whole season, it was 5 at the back. But then as it evolved, as the years went on, 5 at the back against the big boys, 4 at the back, and we can express ourselves more. And then even last season, it was more often than not 4 at the back. So my point is, he's intelligent enough to know exactly what he needs to do. And if you're going to leave Brentford for Spurs, he'd have done his homework. He would have said to Daniel Levy, what do you want from me? You've got to give me the opportunity to get that. If you want me to get into a Champions League place, they're nowhere near a Champions League place as it stands with the squad that they've got. So if Levy's thinking that they should be there and that's the expectation, well, they're only going to fail. Now, Paulinho I do like, and we talked about the holding midfield is very important. He's not your typical signing, but he's only on loan, so it's a no-brainer. But going forward, Troy's alluded Dominic Solanke, is he fit? And even when he is fit, I think the second season he'll be better for it. Those attacking midfielders, they're so light in what is a difficult season coming up. As long as he's got Levy's backing, he'll be absolutely fine. But I think once the season starts, and if it doesn't start well, the board need to come out and actually just even little whispers to say, we understand exactly why this start is happening.
Tim Vickery was on Trans-Euro Express the other week suggesting that Richarlison, he thought, would have a good season this year, motivated a bit like João Pedro by the prospect of representing Brazil at the World Cup next summer. Carlo Ancelotti, a big fan of Richarlison. So he is available and fit at the start of the season, which is important for them because he did struggle with that over the course of last year. But also, the idea of them being lighter on that left-hand side is an issue, I think, because Son has gone to LA. They haven't replaced him directly. I did a squad analysis of them, and I think they're a little bit sort of lopsided at the moment. They need a little bit more over on that left-hand side, a proper left winger probably, before the window closes. Whether they get that or not is a different matter. Obviously, Thomas Frank benefits from the fact that this is his first season, so expectations can be tempered a little bit. It is the second season, but first full season, for Ruben Amorim. So, sexy Ruben Amorim lookalike, as you christened yourself when he first turned up. What is the expectation on his shoulders this year?
I think there's massive expectation because he's the Manchester United manager, because he was almost allowed to write off the Premier League last season. Then he made a complete mess up of it in the Europa League final. That was a game that was there to be won for United, and it was his stubborn tactics and team selections that cost them the chance to do so.
Isn't it ironic that Ange was the one who seemed to be the most stubborn, and yet he changed his tactics for the final, and Ruben Amorim didn't?
Yeah, and I think he's put a lot of pressure on himself for that reason. Obviously, he's been given the authority by the board to get rid of the players that he deems are not of the character that he wants, the likes of Marcus Rashford and Alejandro Garnacho in particular, Jadon Sancho, Anthony Terrell Malacia. And despite the fact that, as Scott alluded to in the first part of the podcast, Sir Jim Ratcliffe was pleading poverty, he spent 200 million quid to bolster the attack. So goals were a big problem for United last year. They only scored 44 in the Premier League. They brought in 3 players who should solve that issue. I think defensively they're okay. If Lenny Yoro stays fit, I think he could be in for a massive season. I still worry about the holding midfield position, particularly if they're going to try and shoehorn Bruno Fernandes in there. But I look at it, and we spoke about Aston Villa and Newcastle and maybe their lack of depth. Obviously, you've mentioned Tottenham there. Bournemouth, who finished above them, have lost players. So have Brighton. I really think 5th place is there for United. With the injection of goals, they've got to hit the ground running. It's a tough start against Arsenal. It's a tough first half a dozen games, actually. But I don't think they'll be as far away from Champions League qualification as people think.
Yeah, Cunha and Burmo and Sesko have arrived for big money. What's the situation with the goalkeeper?
Well, the bad news is that Onana thinks he's going to be fit for the start of the season. No, that's a little bit harsh. But I think it's an issue. It is an issue because Onana is just someone who I think lacks concentration and therefore he makes basic errors. He's not as good with a ball at his feet as a lot of modern goalkeepers, and that was one of the big attractions when they signed him, apparently. I think they'll bring in a new keeper between now and the end of the window. There's a lot of talk about Gigi Donnarumma. I'm not sure why he would leave the champions of Europe to come to Manchester United, but if he did, that would be a transformative signing.
Nick Pope at Newcastle?
I think, yeah, he's a contender, because I think what's more likely is they'll bring in a sort of understudy to Onana, but someone who's capable of pushing him for that number 1 jersey. And who knows, that might just get Onana to focus and actually be a better goalkeeper.
Listen, there's been quite a lot of attacking arrivals. They look top heavy in terms of attacking talent. You've got Ahmad playing as a wing back on the right hand side. You've got Burmo, Sesko, Cunha. Mason Mount has been playing as one of the 10s and as a false 9 in pre-season. You've got Bruno Fernandes. Where does it leave him? Does he have to play in a more deeper role in this team going forward, Troy?
Yeah, I believe so. I do think there'll be games when he gets pushed up into the 10 role. I think you'll see him and Mount change with Mbeumo and Cunha as well, because I don't think they'll play week in, week out. I still think you've spoken all of that. It's that one piece next to whoever's in the 8. And I think Belieber is the one they need to go get. I said it's Crookie not too long ago. They need to go get him now. I think next year they'll lose him. I think somebody else will come in and get him, someone will go over the top of Man United. But they haven't got enough legs in the middle of the park for what they want to do. Ugate's tried to do it. He runs around a lot in his game, but it's not really there. Kobe Mainu, we're not sure if he actually knows the position yet. He's a young man who likes to run around and show his talent. But is he a 6? Is he an 8? Is he a 10? He can do any of those things. And again, you talk about Amorim, and just want to go back a little bit to what Crookie said there. You name 5 players. That's a fifth of your team that he's got to struggle with. So Rashford, Garnacho, all of those, technically bad eggs. What people don't talk about is those 5 have all got a best friend. So there's 10 of them. There's 10 of them, half your squad there that you've got to deal with. So you've got to get rid of those 5 people as quickly as you can and without disrupting everybody. But get rid of them, have a pre-season, which he's got now, and I still think they need to get 2 or 3 in the door, but it's imperative if they want to move forward, they get rid of the other 3 because they're still in the building. We've known for so long that Anthony needs to be gone, that Sancho needs to be gone, that Garnacho wants out, Malacia needs to go, and they're still there. They've only got rid of Rashford. That, in an essence, is Man United's problem. And I think once they get rid of those guys, the whole squad can move forward.
And of course, it is an issue because everybody knows that they want them out, and therefore that means that their value will not be realised. They, probably be allowed to go cheaper than they would have done a year ago.
It's all about negotiations now. They want him out. Everyone knows they want him out. I look at Garnacho, and we've discussed this about Chelsea. And as much as I really, really don't like the attitude that he's shown at United over the last 12 months, I actually think he'll do a good job for Chelsea on the left, with him and Gittins fighting for that spot. But Chelsea are waiting. Chelsea are saying, we'll only offer you this. They know United are desperate, as Troy was saying, to get him off the books. So, yeah, it's just a question now of waiting and negotiating. What's the price?
Yep. OK, that's Manchester United and Tottenham. Let's take a look at the bottom end of the Premier League table now. Arguably, those two were at the bottom end of the Premier League table last year, but I don't think they will be this time around. What about the promoted trio? Are they going to be able to buck the trend, or are some others going to drop? OK, so overall, if the promoted trio end up getting relegated again, how concerning is it for the Premier League, Troy? I was speaking to a sporting director of a club that will be expected to struggle this season, and he said the gap between the Championship and the other teams in the Premier League, if you get promoted, is so huge, there's almost only a slither of hope that you can survive. Is that your reading of it?
No, I agree with him on the level of the gap. The gap is huge. I think the idiotic and moronic version of the teams coming up from the Championship and go, oh, Joe, what, we can out-football all of these Premier League teams. That's the problem. I think if you look, again, Watford came up 6 years ago with Brentford. Brentford, we don't even talk about them being in relegations anymore up until Thomas Frank just left. Fulham came up after that. We don't talk about them doing it. But they all had one thing in common. At a big number 9, they played to their strengths. Everybody else now is trying to play out from the back. It's showcasing the coach's style of football as opposed to winning football. I actually think this year will be the year that it might actually break my heart if one of them doesn't stay up, because I think Wolves are poor. I think West Ham are poor. I think Brentford are poor. So now all of a sudden there's 6 teams now that you should be able to, take points off and get around. I do worry now. Are the likes of Leeds, who are a massive pull, they haven't made a signing that's made me go, oh, that's decent. Not one signing. It's like, oh, okay, that's kind of getting ready for next year. Sunderland are the team that I look at the 3 and go, you've had a right bash, and I think you could have a chance of staying up. They've got some experience in there. They've got some quality in there as well. And I think Sunderland will be the team that can stay up. I think Burnley are going to be trying to be defensively sound, and that's what Scott Parker's got them at. But will they have the goals to stay up? I don't know. Again, you go and get Brozier from Chelsea, and I think I've played as many games in the Premier in the last 5 years as he has.
Certainly, he's about as fit as Crook is on a regular basis.
He'll just chuck out his goal again.
Don't mention it. The issue you've got is that for many years there was at least a couple of teams who you thought you could target, right? At the moment, it's very difficult to pick who that's going to be. I know Troy said West Ham, Wolves, and possibly Brentford are teams that he's concerned about. But last year you might have included Nottingham Forest, you might have included Crystal Palace, who had a bad start to the season but ended up getting a lot of points, 53 last season, which was their record in the Premier League. You might have included one or two of the other of the mid-ranking teams that have been promoted recently, Bournemouth that might have dropped. But those teams you don't fear for in a relegation sense anymore. So who are you fighting against if you're promoted?
I think there's more teams that you fear for this season, and Troy's just listed them. Wolves have lost arguably their 3 best players from last year in Cunha, Ait-Nouri and Semedo. I think there's an awful lot of pressure on Strand Larsen to score the goals to keep them up. They've got a very good manager in Vitor Pereira, which I think probably will get them over the line. Brentford have taken a huge risk, in my opinion, not just in terms of selling Mbeumo. had no real choice there because Manchester United put big money down. He was so desperate to go. I think they're going to sell Johan Wissa as well. But they've gone for an unproven manager in the Premier League, and it's a big beast for someone who was a set-piece coach and has got no experience of this level. I'm not saying that disparagingly to Keith Andrews, but I think it's a bit of an unnecessary risk. I would have gone with more Premier League experience.
Whereas he isn't the president of the Nicholas Jackson fan club. He is very much the president of the Keith Andrews fan club. What is he going to bring to Brentford?
No, look, you can't deny it's not. Of course, it's a risk. He's never been a number one before. He's much more.
Never been a number two before, has he?
Well, assistant, call him what you want. Call him a set piece coach. He's so much more than that.
Set piece coaches, by the way, don't just turn up on a Thursday and do set pieces. Obviously, we know that they do so much more than that throughout the course of.
They should do because no one else cares about them. But
apart from themselves.
I think Troy's on my side with this one. I mean, you make the case for Keith Andrews, and I'm sure.
Well, he hasn't made it yet. Let him make it.
No, I haven't, and I'm not denying it's a gamble. But he's played his whole career at a very good level. He was an international for 40 odd times. He's done a lot of his coaching, and for years, it's well over a decade, he's been coaching behind the scenes. He's ready to be a number one, but you can't deny that it's a gamble. Because this is the Premier League, this is a different beast. And I know what Brentford have tried to do, because they've done that. They've always kind of promoted from within, but never once they're in the Premier League. So of course it is a gamble. And you know what? It'd be a gamble for any manager coming in right now to follow what Thomas Frank has done for the reasons that we gave earlier. Plus you're losing your best players. I mean, it looks like this is going to go as well as we speak. So the players that he's already lost, with a new manager, absolutely they should be talked down now. And I've sort of said to Keith, if you finish 17th, you should be up there with manager of the season, because I think it's going to be a really difficult season.
Obviously, the promoted teams, some of them have spent a bit of money, some of them haven't. Burnley have lost arguably their best player in James Trafford and their central defender, Egan Riley.
And Josh Brownhill.
Josh Brownhill scored all of their goals last season from midfield, and he's gone on a free transfer, I think. He ran out of contract at the end of last season. Sunderland and Leeds have been the biggest spenders. Leeds, I've been impressed with. They've decided that physicality is really important. They've got big, strong, strapping lads. That jump from the Premier League in terms of intensity, speed and physicality is sometimes underestimated, Troy, isn't it? And that is what Daniel Farker has realised.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a bit of a change for Daniel Farker as well, because normally he tries to be attacking first, high speed, high energy. I think it's a big season for him. Now we're going to get onto who we think is going to go first, managers and all of that. But it's a big season for him. I think he's been considered a bit like some of the teams he's been at. Too good for the Championship, but not good enough for the Prem. And he's under a lot of pressure. But you talk about the players that they've signed. Again, I don't want to make it about individual. We look at Longstaff, right? He's a good player, solid. Does he get older, the team? I don't know. He's never had to do that before. He's always been coming off the bench or one of the 11, not really the mainstay. Also, is he someone that's going to get on the ball and dominate? Not really. So I just feel like it's, again, when we got promoted the first time in 2015, we was going, right, we'll go old school. We had two up front, but we're going to have a solid back four, solid midfield, and all we're going to play for is to stay in the game as long as we can. And if we get chances from set pieces and me and Igalo up front, we'll try and win a game that way. Who's going to get you the goals for Leeds?
Well, that's a problem. They do need a striker. Obviously, Bamford has gone. He's not part of the plan. Not gone yet, but he is going to. They certainly are going to let him go. Peru did okay last year.
He did. It's a big season for him, and the match has come in and scored a couple of goals in pre-season. But he has gone big and physical and realised exactly what the Premier League is about. But the final third, there's absolutely the need side. Otherwise, they will struggle.
He says he needs someone, and obviously Lucas Nemecha has history in English football, but he has not scored a lot of goals since he's been in Germany, so it's a lot of pressure on him.
You also need characters to play for Leeds United as well. There was 50,000 that played in Ireland, watched them in Ireland.
Yep.
That's a massive, massive club. So if they don't know about it now, these players coming in, they will do soon enough.
Burnley, we'll talk about in just a second, but Sunderland, I know you're a little bit sweet on why.
I like a lot of their signings, particularly Granit Xhaka. I think it's a real coup for the football club. Someone who rebuilt his reputation towards the end of his Arsenal career, obviously having had a high-profile fallout with the supporters. He's had a couple of brilliant years in Leverkusen. He's still only 32. I think his experience will be crucial. They've taken a bit of a gamble with Simon Adingra, but he's got that Premier League knowledge under his belt, and I think if they can get him back to his best, he could be a real handful. I know they're excited about one or two of the other players they brought in, and I like Regis Lebris. I think he took the Championship by surprise last season. If we just sat here a year ago, not many of us were touting Sunderland for promotion to the Premier League, and I think he might just surprise a few people in the top flight as well.
Troy, you mentioned just a moment ago about when you came up to the Premier League, it was about being solid, getting knockdowns from set pieces and nicking a goal here and there. Can Burnley bore their way to points in the Premier League?
No. I think that's what they're going to try and do, but I just don't think that they can. I think they've got obviously the experience of Kyle Walker in there. It's going to be a shock to his system as well, by the way, not being at a team that's expected to dominate and have the ball all the time and playing out from the back. Because I think the last time he would have been in that situation was probably on loan at Aston Villa many years ago. So I think there's going to be a lot of issues. Again, I touched on it earlier. I do believe you need a striker. You need someone that can get you at least 10 goals. Bro, I don't know. I saw him literally last season kick the floor for Everton and come off injured.
I remember that.
So at that point, I think there's clearly a player in there. There's clearly the ability. I'm just not sure whether they can do it. But for Burnley, the one thing that they do have, a little bit like Brentford, is that tight pitch. Fan base will make it difficult. It's hard to go there in those cold months as well. So they do have to make it scrappy and ugly. But who's going to get you to 10 goals? I'm not sure. And then just to piggyback off what Alex was saying, I think Adingra is the signing for Sunderland that will keep them up or not, because Brighton, he drove a lot and get to the end and he'd have a bit of a wild swing at the ball. But I actually think for a team that's going to be without the ball, carrying them 50, 60 yards up the pitch, I think he's going to be excellent for them.
Okay, we're almost at the point we're going to make our predictions, but I just want to bring up a concern I have about a London club, Scott Minto. I'm sorry. West Ham United. Are they going to be down there fighting relegation? They've signed El Hadj Malik Diouf, who's by all accounts been quite an impressive fullback, Carl Walker-Peters. So they brought in 2 new fullbacks. They brought in Mads Hermansen from Leicester, and they've got basically the oldest strike force in the history of the world. Wilson, full crew. Are they going to sign Jamie Vardy on a free contract as well?
Mikel Antonio's not going to be around.
He's not.
So that would bring it down, which is in a way is a shame. But Graham Potter's made that decision.
Where are they going to fight?
I worry for West Ham as we sit here. I worry for West Ham, and Troy's absolutely spot on to mention those 3 teams, and one of them being West Ham right now, because it wasn't good last season. I wanted Graham Potter to come in before Lopetegui. He came in halfway through the season, and I think it was almost a bit like a Ruben Amorim, but obviously a much less exposure and pressure. And the West Ham fans were so fed up with what they saw that they were happy to just go with what he wants. But what I wanted to see, that even if it wasn't sort of brilliant style of football, something. An improvement on individual players and also as a team, and I didn't see any of that. And then what we're talking about in terms of the players in, well, I'm sorry, everyone's improving. I think for the first time in a couple of years, the promoted teams, the managers are being given a chance by their boards, as we just discussed. Unless they get some proper signings in from now to the end of the window, I worry what kind of season it could be.
Okay, we're going to do our predictions very shortly, but first of all, we're going to quiz the chief, sorry. talkSPORT's chief football correspondent Alex Crook has been over the transfer sagas of the summer. He's been breaking more stories than we used to break windows in the back garden when we were playing football. Crookmeister, some quick fire questions for you before we do our predictions for the season. What shirt is Alexander Isak going to be wearing at the start of the campaign?
A Liverpool red one.
Interesting. Will Newcastle actually sign anyone?
Yes, they will sign Jan Wisser. They're going to sign Malik Tior from AC Milan to give them an extra option at centre-back. And they'll have to get one more forward in as well. There's been a bit of talk about Samu, isn't there, who was close to Chelsea a couple of years ago. So one to keep an eye on.
Spurs, will they get a replacement for Son and Maddison?
Well, the most recent name that's come out is Savinho. Talks have taken place between Spurs and Manchester City, but City seem reluctant to sell him. I think it would take a club record fee. They're going to have to get reinforcements because otherwise it's going to be a really tough season for Thomas Frank. So yes, I expect them to do business.
Not going to get Jack Grealish because he's gone to Everton, who we haven't really spoken about, but I think all of us believe they're going to have a pretty solid season, and actually might be dark horses for a European place in that new stadium under David Moyes. They've also got players that have come in. Barry, who looks particularly impressive, and I know he's well thought of.
And Jai as well have a big season for them.
And Jai was brilliant for them last season, actually, and expected to do so again. Will Aston Villa do any more business?
Again, they're going to have to, because I mentioned they lost those 2 loan players. I think the real key for them is keeping hold of their stars. Obviously, we broke the news at Manchester United at one stage. We're keen on Ollie Watkins. He's on Newcastle's list as well, but Villa don't want to let him go. Morgan Rogers is still in the forefront of Chelsea's minds, but I think that would be a massive blow for Villa if they sold him. And did Chelsea need any more players of that mould? Jacob Ramsey's an interesting...
Can he play centre-half?
Well, Jacob Ramsey's a very interesting one because obviously from a PSR point of view, selling him would be 100% profit on the books. West Ham have been keen, but I'm told he's got no interest in going there. Could he be a solution for Tottenham in terms of giving Thomas Frank extra firepower at the top end of the pitch?
Interesting. Crystal Palace went into the Community Shield struggling actually a little bit in terms of numbers. Their manager bemoaning the fact that he didn't have enough players and was promised reinforcements after the FA Cup final win. They haven't lost anyone yet. Eze and Guehi, though, subject of a lot of interest. Guehi's contract runs out at the end of this season. Eze's been the subject of speculation all summer. Will they keep them?
It's a strange one because I think if they had a choice and they had to lose one of them, they would choose to lose Guehi simply because he's only got a year left in his contract and it's a disaster financially if he gets to this time next year, hasn't agreed a new deal, which by all accounts he won't, and they have to let him go for a free. I think it's more likely that they cash in on Eze, and Arsenal are still lurking in the background when it comes to him, because the impression I get from Guehi is that he's quite content to do another year at Palace. He's going to be the captain. He's going to play week in, week out, which is important coming up for a World Cup year when, if he's fit, I think we expect him to be England's first choice central defender. And then he's got his pick of clubs, not just in the Premier League, but I'm told there's some big European clubs who might come from him at the end of the season as well.
Okay, up next, we're going to round things off with the moment you've been waiting for. Our big Premier League predictions. So it's time to reveal our Premier League predictions for the season. What we're going to do is we'll put it up on the graphic on the YouTube show. Keep a note of it if you're listening audio-wise, but don't worry because we'll be bringing it up most weeks, especially if Crookie makes a horrendous error. Troy Deeney, Premier League winner, top 4, biggest disappointment, top scorer. Who will be relegated and the first manager to be sacked? Can you go through your list, please, and then we'll discuss it?
The Premier League winner, Liverpool, is who I'm going for. I am going to then go top 4 of Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal, Chelsea. There's about 8 teams you could put in this biggest disappointment, but I want to put Leeds United.
Leeds United, okay, fine.
But I expect Leeds to, with that crowd, and I expect him to be able to get after teams, but I just think they're just going to flatter to deceive. I really do.
Top scorer?
Haaland.
Who's your 3 to be relegated?
I'm going for Leeds, Burnley, Wolverhampton Wanderers.
First manager to be sacked?
Daniel Farker.
You're very down on Leeds United. Why?
Well, again, they got promoted last year. Daniel Farker didn't even celebrate with his team because he thought he was getting the sack. There was a load of talk around whether he's going to be kept or not, and I just think for as good as a manager he is and a nice person that he is, I think the Premier League's so ruthless. And the last time Leeds were there, if you remember, they held on too long, didn't they? And they ended up bringing Big Sam in towards the end. I just think they're going to have so much pressure on them for the fan base to deliver that I just don't think they're going to sit around and wait anymore now until late November. I think if he has a bad start, then they'll get rid of him.
You also...
By the way, I'm not down on Leeds.
Well, you said they're the biggest disappointment. The first manager is going to be sacked is Daniel Farker, and they're going to be relegated. That's pretty down.
Why would they be my biggest disappointment, Sam?
Huh?
Because I expect a lot for them. They're my biggest disappointment because I expect a lot for them.
All right, okay, fine. That's going to make you some friends in Yorkshire. You're going to be about as popular as Crookie is at Ellen Road. Scott Minto, you've got your list with you. Premier League winner?
So I was umming and ahhing about this. Liverpool, for me, is the obvious one, but I just think there's something about Arsenal. I think it depends. Touched on Gyökeres. It's not solely down to him, but 13 games drawn last season. I've mentioned it a couple of times, playing against Michael Owen, where he gets 5 touches of the ball, 2 touches in the back of the net. We're going home on the bus thinking, what happened there? We played well. There's nothing like a top striker who can stick the ball in the back of the net. So if Gyökeres does what he does with the well-balanced squad that they've got now, I'm going to go for Arsenal.
Okay, your top 4 then. Arsenal.
Yeah, plus also the motivation of being the bridesmaid for the last 3 years. You know, that's in the back of their minds, and will be in every training session.
They had that last season, finished 10 points behind.
Well, yeah, and I gave the reasons why I felt they finished second last season. But again, they didn't have the striker to turn a game where it's a draw into a win.
Okay, you've gone for Liverpool, City and Chelsea, as Troy has. So at the moment, everyone's got the same top 4. But who's going to be your biggest disappointment?
I'm going for Newcastle. I think it's going to be hard to combine Premier League and Champions League, and for the reasons we've given as well in the pod, I think Eddie Howe's got one hand tied behind his back at the moment. So I'm going Newcastle.
Top goal scorer?
Haaland.
Same as Troy. And relegated?
I've gone for, I don't think Burnley are able to score the goals to keep them up, and you need that in the Premier League. So I've gone Burnley. Sunderland have been given a chance, but I'm still going to go with them. I'm going to favour Leeds by keeping them up. So the one team that will stay up is Leeds, and for them to be switched with Wolves.
Oh, interesting. Who's going to be the first manager to be sacked?
Don't like saying this. Horrible question. You're better than this, Sam, to be honest with you, but
I'm not.
I worry for Graham Potter.
Why?
Because what we just said, he hasn't improved the team. He hasn't been given any funds. I mean, I suppose he's got the technical director, someone who's on his side there. But I think the fans gave him patience last season. They won't give him patience this season if it starts badly.
That's the key thing for me. And the reason I've gone for Graham Potter as the first manager to be sacked is because I think that the impatience at West Ham doesn't actually reflect necessarily Graham Potter's performance. It is a general feeling of malaise that's been allowed to set in there, because there's a little bit of a cross wires at the top of the ownership where some people want to do this, some people want to do that. You know, David Sullivan has the ultimate say, but there's other people with interests there. And ultimately, they haven't built on the success of the Conference League. They've regressed every season since then. And I just think that the recruitment, although they've got a couple of fullbacks in, and they've got Callum Wilson through the door on a free transfer, I just don't think they've done enough in a season where everybody else seems to be moving forward. Yeah.
See, Graham Potter was going to be my selection, and I pivoted away from it just because I think defensively they're going to be okay, and I think he has the ability to put together a strong defensive unit. Paquetá, I think he's going to be better this season because he's not got the mental worry of whether he's going to get a big ban or not for his betting charges. And Jarrod Bowen has got the X factor. I think Jarrod Bowen will keep them clear of trouble, which is why I think Potter will just about be okay.
Okay, I've also gone for champions to be Manchester City. Liverpool, Arsenal and Chelsea, the same top 4 as the other 2 as well. Biggest disappointment, I've gone for Aston Villa. And again, I'm not down on Villa. I actually really like Aston Villa, and I went to Aston Villa a lot last year, and I've got a little bit of a soft spot for them. But I just think they haven't strengthened from a position of power. They were doing so well to get into the Champions League. They had some great nights in the Champions League, and I'm gutted that they haven't been able to add to that. And I do think it's a flaw of the PSR rules, but I think because of that, Unai Emery has got it all to do, balancing again European football on a Thursday night and playing in the Premier League. I think it's going to be difficult for them. Top scorer, I have taken a massive punt here, by the way. I've gone for Victor Gyökeres. Now, he's got a lot of goals over the last couple of years in Portugal. If Arsenal get the service to him right, he will score goals. He takes a lot of shots.
If you're right, Arsenal do win the title.
Well, we'll see. Relegated, I've got Sunderland, Burnley and West Ham United. Sorry, Scott. And obviously you've heard about the first manager to be sacked, which was Graham Potter. So, Alex, Crook, what champion have you gone for?
I've gone for Liverpool.
Does that hurt you as a Manchester United supporter?
Yeah. Do you know
Back-to-back
what?
triumphs for Liverpool?
I was obviously sat behind the goal in front of the Palace fans yesterday, watching Liverpool and watching Florian Wirtz.
That's because you kicked off when everyone said we wanted you in front of the Liverpool.
Well, I knew Palace were going to win. And watching Ekitike in particular, I just thought, you know what? In the glory days under Fergie, this is what Manchester United would do. They win the league one year, and then they bring in quality the next season, and they kick on again. And that's what I expect Liverpool to do. The top four, I've gone for the same as everybody else. Arsenal second. It's a toss of a coin for me, Chelsea or Man City third and fourth, but I think that to me looks pretty rock solid in terms of those top four positions. I'm hoping Manchester United can get fifth, and that'll be a Champions League place. In terms of top scorer, I've taken an even bigger punt than you. I've gone João Pedro because I think he's in for a massive year, as I say, with the motivation of wanting to be Brazil's number 9. Biggest disappointment, I've gone Man City because I don't think they'll be as close to winning the title as a lot of people do. Certainly not as close as you think they will be, and maybe Troy does as well. I think they've punted on young up-and-coming players that may well be great in the future, but I'm not sure they're going to improve the team enough now, and I do worry about Rodri's ongoing fitness issues. Relegation, I've made the case for Sunderland. I think they'll stay up. Therefore, one of the established teams is going to drop. Sorry, Keith Andrews, but you were overlooked for the MK Dons job, and now all of a sudden you're a Premier League manager. I'm going to go Brentford. Nothing against Keith at all. Brentford, Burnley will finish rock bottom. I'd be surprised if they get 35 points. And I'm going to go Leeds just because of that lack of a number 9. And therefore it brings me on to the first manager to be sacked. I was going to go Graham Potter, but I think Jarrod Bowen will keep him in the job a bit longer. I'm going to go Farke because they did seriously consider the Leeds board replacing him at the end of last season. They looked at his record as a Premier League manager, and it doesn't really stand up to close scrutiny. The caveat to that is that he wasn't really backed financially by Norwich. I would argue he's not been backed financially by Leeds in this window. And I think if we get 10 games into the season and they're in the bottom 3, I think those owners will make a change.
Up to the data analysts, by the way, believe that Brentford have got a less than 9% chance of being relegated.
But they're basing that on the goals they've scored in previous seasons.
They also said Sheffield Wednesday would finish mid-table this coming season in the Championship as well.
Well, you never know. You never know. Things can change very quickly. Football is a long season and things will ebb and flow, but we will remind you of all those predictions over the course of the season. And we want you to let us know in the comments section below what you think of our predictions and if you agree or disagree with any of what we have picked so far. The Premier League All Access podcast will continue throughout the course of the season, twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays, bringing you all the reaction and previews to the big action in the Premier League, plus all the big transfer stories, all the latest news, and of course reactions to the Premier League teams in European competition as well. If you are new to the podcast, please give it a listen, tell all your friends about it, download it, give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast from, and enjoy the new season on talkSPORT. It starts with a bang Friday night, Bournemouth against Liverpool at Anfield, a big night for Arne Slot and his reigning champions. That's live and only on talkSPORT. On Saturday we've got Aston Villa against Newcastle. We're round the grounds every Saturday and Sunday. Adrian will bring you Game Day Live on Saturdays. Game Day Live comes to Sundays as well. I'll be doing that with the Crook Meister and a cast of thousands. On Monday nights, we've got Monday Night Football for you as well. And we'll be at Ellen Road for the first week. Leeds United against Everton. And before all that starts, Deeney, Matterface and Crook will start our new programme on talkSPORT, 10 to 1, every Friday. And our first big guest is Keith Andrews on Friday. Looking forward to that?
Yeah.
We'll see you there.